The nature of the challenge is what we thought it would be, but the scale of it probably is slightly bigger.
Only slightly, guys. Just slightly. Now, to be fair to another guy when he was brought in, Ruben Amorim did say they were now in the midst of a long process and there would be pain before they see success again. That's a lot of pain. Even for the theater of screams, man, never been a more fitting name. An absolute torture chamber for United supporters. Finishing just above the relegation zone and losing a final against a team that is known for losing finals or generally falling flat on their faces before the finish line. This was quite literally one of the worst seasons in their entire history. But hey, first silver lining of the video, I'm sure Sir Jim will be happy that he won't have to pay for that Europa League winning barbecue. They still had a barbecue for some of the staff and stuff on Thursday, but also laid off a bunch of them. United may as well have had negative points in the Premier League, as stupid decision after stupid decision culminated in this disaster. Something I never thought I would see as a football enjoyer, but as time has progressed, the scary part is that with each failure, it wasn't a surprise, you know? Like if you were to tell the results of this season to someone back in 2012, they would never believe you.
Check it out.
But as you have lived through each year and seen season upon season how things have progressed, it's crazy that there was less and less shock. The expectations have fallen through the floor. But is there hope for next season? What are some glass half full viewpoints at a time when it probably feels like said glass has been run over repeatedly by a bus?
But again, I will continue to do the things the way I know.
I mean, for better or worse, you've gotta back the way he sticks to his vision. There are absolutely things he has gotten wrong, as any manager gets things wrong, but unfortunately for Amorim, he's working for a club where there was zero room for error. Coming in mid-season, it's near impossible to have a successful change of system when you have players that have proven to already be struggling to be successful in a system they did understand. And I mean, saying Ten Hag had a system towards the end of his tenure is being a bit generous, isn't it? When switching to a back three, the spacing between the three center backs versus a back four is really foreign to a lot of defenders. Even the spacing between themselves and the wing backs can prove to be a challenge compared to a fullback. And you saw that often with attackers making free runs between United center backs all the time because they were unaware or they weren't clued in into which space was their responsibility. On top of that, you can't say that United has top defenders, right? I mean, Lenny Yoro, Martinez aside. However, some pundits are acting as if Amorim is trying to play formations from the late 1800s, like a 1-1-8 or a 1-2-7, back when football and rugby were similar sports. Three at the back is not insane. You don't see it as often in England, no. Conte used it with Chelsea, Tuchel did as well with Chelsea, both were successful. In fact, Chelsea were struggling in Conte's first season until he switched to that formation. You look at the squad he had, however, and they were a side that had won the Premier League just 2 years prior. Of course, they could adapt. You can't compare the squads at all. Going further, thanks to Conte and Inzaghi's shared belief in the 3-5-2, Inter have been playing with that system for about 6 years now and have seen success return to them domestically and are playing in their second Champions League final in 3 years. Again, the difference is in the players, not the system. Bayer Leverkusen nearly went invincible across all competitions last season, losing just one game in an entire season, and Xabi played with which formation during that dominant spell? I mean, you get it at this point. So it can be done, but trying to switch to that kind of formation when you have a group of players who are used to losing already, have zero confidence, could barely play in a quote-unquote common system, and there's just a general air of negativity surrounding the club, from the ownership to the executives to the squad and some sects of the fan base, a defeatist mentality. And honestly, can't blame the negativity on the supporter side, can you? But it makes for a tough hill to climb. Now, all of that said, Amorim had some confusing calls as far as player selections and substitutions throughout the season. Some of them he had his hands tied. Others were unforced errors, like how he signed Dorgu, and then he had Dorgu and Dalot to play on opposite flanks than where they should be, wanting them to cut inside but absolutely killing their crossing ability. In the Europa League final, no substitutions until you are 25 minutes into the second half. Brother, what? Especially when you have someone like Garnacho. I get it. Garnacho is very inconsistent. He proved that all season long, but you needed his directness earlier in the game. Also, what are you doing in leaving Bruno so deep? Get him closer to the goal. Get Ugarte out there in the midfield, someone who has improved as the season has gone on. Play Mazraoui as your right center back, Yoro at left center back, yoink Shaw out of there, put Dalot as the right wing back. I don't know, man. Really poor management from Amorim in that final, showing some inexperience for sure. There was a lot wrong with Manchester United across the season, but the biggest thing holding them back was the attack.
We managed not to score again, and that is really hard to win football matches.
Totally agree. Yes, the defense was leaky. Yes, Onana absolutely cost them quite a few games, but on average, the attack looked hopeless and was the reason why they were failing to win games. Plenty of 2-2s, 1-1s, 0-0s, 1-0 losses, and as pointed out previously, the stats have changed a bit since, but only one team underperformed them on their expected goals, Crystal Palace. Otherwise, United's finishing has been worse than every other team in the league. Now, their expected goals in general rank 12th in the league, just behind Villa actually, but ahead of teams like Forest. So you can understand why United want to bring in an attacker, because nobody but the players on the pitch can rectify that underperformance. The chances are there, not boatloads of them, not saying that, but they're there and they're being squandered regularly. Now, a divisive part.
I was always really honest with you guys.
Yep, that's true, and you could say that his honesty could go either way. The players won't have liked it all the time, even if the fans appreciate it. Look, it's always refreshing hearing somebody speak so openly because it's not as common. We're used to managers and players dodging questions by not taking them head on, and so when you see honesty, it can be refreshing. But I think Ruben Amorim may have seen how people responded to his honesty really early on when he was first signed with the club, and that became a badge of honor. It enabled him. I think it's easy for people to say, well, the players make this much money, they have to be able to take criticism, but I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Some people don't care what others think of them, others do, irrespective of how much money they make. Imagine you're doing your job horribly and you know already you are doing horribly, with the world watching, with everyone doing nothing but absolutely trashing you in the media and on social media, and then even your coach is saying things like, "We are the worst United team in the history of the Premier League." Yeah, it's true, but that won't exactly propel you to do better. Not everyone responds to that kind of motivation. That can just bury some people even further. I also think the Rashford situation perhaps wasn't dealt with incredibly well, but that one could go either way. Has Rashford always been the perfect professional? No. Has that also been overblown by certain newspapers who love doing a racist dog whistle? For sure. But I do think it would have been in Amorim's best interests to try to get performances out of Rashford and get him on side rather than send him packing. I get the power move and why he did it, but anyway, let's get into some general negatives and positives about the club.
The club announced up to 200 more job cuts.
Well, as part of cost-cutting measures at Old Trafford.
Now, in the fallout from the Europa League final loss, even more jobs were cut. This coming after job cut this past season since Ineos has really been in control. People who have rent or mortgages to pay, families to feed, the rising cost of living to contend with in the UK. Let's all make sure this is very clear. I feel for those who are spending money to watch United play, who are investing their money into the club and getting served up putrid slop, and can feel for United fans on a human level who want to see success again. But the actual victims in all of this are the people who have lost their jobs. 200 more after the Europa League final, and could be even more on the way. It wouldn't surprise me. But on the football side of things, it's obvious. No money after the failure, as they automatically lose out on £80 million they would have received just for being in the UCL, irrespective of where they would have finished in the league phase of the competition. Also, within their Adidas deal, they will lose about £10 million per year as they aren't in a European competition. This is the first time they've had to deal with this kind of loss. And with the financial issues they have, that means the owners have to dig in their pockets to back the manager, or, of course, raise funds through player sales. This means losing a sellable asset such as Alejandro Garnacho, who seems like he wants to leave anyway, given what he said following the Europa League final, which was, quote, "Our season was shitty and now we lose the final. We can't beat anyone in the league. I played every round of the Europa League until now, and in the final, I only played 20 minutes. I don't get it." Understandable as to why he would want to leave, but unfortunate from United's point of view given his talent and perhaps another mistake from Amorim, but only in hindsight, right? Because I stand by the fact that Garnacho has been streaky, and if I was a coach with some of the performances Mount had off of the bench, I'd maybe lean toward him as well. But all the same, it's clear that he was one of the more talented players in the club, and getting him some consistency in his game could only benefit them. But on the weekend, David Ornstein revealed that Amorim told the squad at training that Garnacho would be finding another club for next season. So yeah, it's over. What about some glass half full views of things? Well, according to Fabrizio Romano, who is basically a mouthpiece for clubs and players, I mean, shout out to him, they just go directly to him to break news, that's great for him, but he says that United are absolutely sticking with Ruben Amorim and will back him this summer, which has consistently been the viewpoint of a lot of fans that Amorim needs a summer in order to build this team in his vision, rather than using players from the Oli era, the Ten Hag era, his players that can play in his system as he had previously. And with no Europe, it could be a little easier to convince some players to leave, which could help raise funds to facilitate some of these moves. For example, would a Casemiro be easier to convince to accept a proposal from Saudi or the like? Granted, he will be in his final season with Manchester United, but it's less the transfer fee that United would be interested in, and more getting his wages off of their books. Also, with no Europe, Amorim will have way more time on the training pitch, which he has consistently brought up as an issue for them when they are playing 2 or 3 matches per week. That doesn't help with the system adaptation. Now it will basically be 1 match per week, bar some cup matches. As well, having a proper preseason without the Club World Cup, luckily for them, is where Amorim really builds up the squad. Granted, they do have this postseason tour of Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur coming. I'm sure they are really looking forward to that. Now, Ruben Amorim used to have these sort of boot camp style preseasons in Portugal where they would head to the Algarve for 10 days, double sessions in the sun, and often he would film the sessions as well. They wouldn't just go over the match footage, but training footage as well to really drill his philosophy into these players and help them understand it. He also absolutely cleared out Sporting Squad back in 2020, something they desperately needed to do, and you can see the same coming for Manchester United. Anyone who doesn't buy in is allowed to leave, which will leave only those who are willing to work and work hard within his system, which creates a more unified and determined squad, all pulling in the same direction. So, is there hope? As mentioned at the beginning, there will be a lot more pain before they find success, and like it or not, sacking the manager and starting again will just continue the cycle of failure. So, they're locked in with Amorim. But I know it's a low standard, but there can only be improvement from here. Assuming Amorim gets some signings in, and after some rest and a big training camp, I can only see United getting better after this monumental disaster. I mean, they have to, right?